the next piece is Gen Z. The best thing Gen Z can do is learn from some of the millennials' mistakes. And the biggest one is student loans. An entire generation is completely hamstrung by massive student loans that were essentially, it was almost fraud, because the promise was, if you get your undergraduate degree, it's worth whatever you pay for it, and you'll make so much more money that you'll just pay the loans off and it'll be no big deal. And it sends families back and individuals back sometimes a decade or more in their wealth journey.
I've learned so much over this first year of podcasting, and I wanted to share with you guys the 10 most life-changing lessons that I've learned this year. So I created a document, and it's on my website. What you're going to do, you're going to go there. It's going to be 10 life-changing lessons. Click on that button. It'll ask for your email address so I can email it to you. Sign up for it, because these life lessons radically changed the way I viewed my life and the way I started living. It helped me to get better in the areas that I've so desperately wanted to see progress and growth in. And because I know they helped me, I really believe that they will help you. And I wanted this to be a gift for you guys. So I really hope you enjoy this gift, and go to the website, thewholepersonpodcast.com to get it. It's free. And I hope you guys enjoy and learn as much as I did from it. So have you ever wondered what life would be like if you had a little bit less stress when it came to financial freedom? I don't know about you guys, but I sure have, and so has my wife. And over the years, we've done different things. We planned different things to get better. And all along the way, we've had the advice of different financial advisors. They have kind of just come and gone. No one has really just stuck to give us advice except my own father. My father's reaching retirement, and, he's my dad. So sometimes it's just hard taking advice from your dad. But that's just because, I'm a little bit hard-headed. So today, we have an awesome, fun guest here on the show today, Eric Brotman. Eric is a CFP, AEP, CPWA, and a whole heck of a lot of other alphabetical letters that I don't know what they mean. He is a Chief Executive Officer of BFG Financial, and an independent firm assisting clients with creating wealth, preserving wealth, and distributing it. He began his financial planning practice in Baltimore in 1994, just a few years after I was born, and funded the Brotman Financial Group in 2003, which later changed into its corporate identity to BFG Financial Advisory. He provides investments, retirements, estate, insurance, and many other comprehensive financial services for families such as yourself, professionals, executives, overall owners within industry, and basically anyone who wants to better their financial life. So welcome to the show, Eric. Welcome to the Whole Person Podcast.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun today.
Good, man. Good. Well, for starters, man, how are you doing through this whole COVID thing?
For us, I'm almost embarrassed to say we've reasonably been thriving, which, it bothers me because so many people are suffering so much.
Right.
There's healthcare issues that are unimaginable. There's 30 plus million Americans out of work, which is also extremely difficult. And in some cases catastrophic. There'll be members of the middle class who never recover. And those things are catastrophic, truly. As an organization, we have 21 employees, 8 financial advisors, and we have been working remotely now for over 2 months.
Wow.
So what I have found is that through the beauty of Zoom and the beauty of being able to work remotely, we really haven't missed a beat. And in fact, a lot of folks have sought out information and financial advice during these times, either because of a job loss or because of life changes. And so, we've kept very, very busy, and I feel very fortunate.
Well, that's awesome. I'm actually really glad to hear that. And, I'm kind of right there with you where luckily my wife and I, our vocations are considered essential. She works in a higher end position in a bank, and I'm a real estate agent. And so even though the market has taken a hit and has bounced back a little bit in this area, and we've been lucky to where it hasn't affected us as much either. But for the families that it has affected, or industries, because even real estate has been affected. I haven't seen as many sales over the past months that I normally would. What is a way that people can protect their income as well as their financial wealth and positioning in life?
Well, in general, there are some strategies, but currently, I think it's important to focus on what is most urgent and what is most critical, because right now this is sort of a triage opportunity. If this was medicine, this is one of those where first you sort everything out and then you decide what's going to happen next. For families, if you have your health currently and you still have an income, you still have a job, you're going to come through this much, much better than just about anybody else. So I would say that side hustles, which I believe I'm part of for you right now, which is great. Side hustles have never been more important. The millennial generation figured this out. Gen Z is going to be second nature at it. Xers and boomers, not quite sure yet, but the side hustle's never been more important, because in a period where there's high unemployment and people could potentially lose a job, it's real important to have a secondary source of income in a household. In addition, just making sure that there's an emergency fund, that you have available credit matters. So right now, I would say keep an eye. If you own a home and you have a home equity line of credit, keep an eye on it. Make sure that it stays open and active. Talk to your bank if necessary. If you have other types of lines of credit, make sure they're available. You don't want to start paying rent or a mortgage with Visa. That would be a total disaster. So, and then, the next piece is Gen Z. The best thing Gen Z can do is learn from some of the millennials' mistakes. And the biggest one is student loans. An entire generation is completely hamstrung by massive student loans that were essentially, it was almost fraud, because the promise was, if you get your undergraduate degree, it's worth whatever you pay for it, and you'll make so much more money that you'll just pay the loans off and it'll be no big deal. And it sends families back and individuals back sometimes a decade or more in their wealth journey.
I want to drop a few elbows on that subject.
No problem. Let's do it.
Like, I want to give some black eyes. I want to give some jugular throat punches, because you have hit the nail on the head. I am a lucky individual. I went to a private Christian institution, great college. I graduated with $33,000 of student loans. Most of my classmates graduated from the lower end 80 to 130,000 in there.
Mhm.
I got very lucky to come out with so little. And I attribute that to my parents. They did a phenomenal job in providing for me to go to college. But, when I got out of college, then they're like, you know what? I think we're done. Like, we're not going to pay these off. This is on you now. And I was so bitter and angry.
Oh, you borrowed it. They didn't.
Right. No, exactly. But I was so bitter and angry, and I wanted to blame them. Like,
Yeah.
You told me you're going to pay for this, so I went, and now you're not. I at the end of the day, it was my choice. And 10 years later, I have like $900 left to pay off. And I'm not bitter or angry at my parents, but because it also became one of the biggest blessings, because it has made me financially wiser, because it was
learning from it.
Yeah, well, not only that, but paying it was a hardship.
You made this decision. You made this decision at 17 or 18 years old. You weren't equipped for this decision.
Yeah, no, not.
So
not at
yes,
all.
you made it, and you made it of your own free will, and you made it as chronologically an adult.
Yeah.
But to think that young people are capable of making six-figure financial decisions that are going to impact their entire lives before they're old enough to vote or have a Budweiser doesn't make sense to me. And so, you look at this, it is a decision no young person's really prepared to make, and they're not getting the right guidance, because the guidance they were getting is, go to the best school you can get into. It doesn't matter what it costs. You're going to make, look how much more you're going to make if you have a college degree.
Right.
That's not entirely true.
Absolutely. Well, and here's what's crazy. So regarding my story, I could have gone to a local college, and it's a good college, Fort Hays State University, and I could have gone for probably somewhere around $4,000, because I lived in the city over 4 years.
Hmm.
But I wanted to go to the expensive Christian university, and my parents
Hmm.
let me, and I still had to pay for it, and that was my choice. Um, and my parents paid for it drastically as well, and they did a great job. But you're right. There's this promise of this idea that, you know, the world is going to want you.
Hmm.
Your
That's right.
job, you're going to be so more valuable. I got out of college, got married the very following week, and was unemployed for 9 months. My wife and I did not get along, and she thought she was probably married to a bum. You know, I, I
I think
couldn't
you've
get
made
a
up for
job.
it now.
Yeah, no, probably a little
I'd
bit.
say you've made up for it, Evan.
We're in 10 years, so we're doing pretty good now.
That is pretty good.
But yeah, I am literally a month away from paying off my student loans or less. And you're absolutely right. It has crippled my family. I wouldn't say crippled, but it's hindered my family for at least now 10 years.
I have bad news for you.
What's that?
The damage that it's done financially to you, that you can see, is like the part of the iceberg you can see.
Oh, don't say that. But
Here's
that
what you
makes so much sense, though.
here's what you need to know. I just wrote an article. I'm a contributor for Forbes.com, and I just wrote an article a few hours ago, actually, that's going to go live in a few weeks, and it is about that student loan concept. And I used a very simple example. I used an example where someone comes out of school at 22 with $50,000 of student debt. And, we've seen people with $500,000 between a married couple, between undergrad and grad. $500,000 of student loans is $3,000 a month for 30 years with no house. Like that's
Right.
nuts. But anyway, take $50,000 just as an example. And let's say that it takes you 10 years to pay that off at $500 a month, which is about right. I mean, we're
Mhm.
using simple math. Now you're 32, you're debt free, and you're going to take that same $500 a month and put it away until you're 67, your normal retirement age. $500 a month from 32 to 67 grows to, call it 650 grand, assuming a 6% rate of return. And we could play with that all day, but just for basic numbers. If you didn't have the student loan, and instead of paying $500 a month for 10 years to the student loan, you started paying that same $500 a month to your account and got the same returns, and you did it from 22 to 67 instead of from 32 to 67, you more than double your money. In other words, the $50,000 loan didn't just cost 50 grand. In that case, it cost almost $700,000 of wealth.
Uh,
So I'm sorry if I've ruined your morning, but at the end of the day, the young people are making these massive decisions. So think about that. Think about what $700,000 would mean now. And I know there's time value of money, and there's inflation, and the dollar's worth less in X number of years and all of that. But if you were to take a 4% withdrawal from that for life, that's $28,000 a year during your retirement that just disappeared because of one $50,000 loan.
hmm. So many people are in my same scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I can't change that now. So now what?
Well, what it means is you either have to save longer and work longer, which you don't necessarily want, or you have to put away more. You have a
Right.
fewer number of years, smaller number of years to save for your own financial independence. That means you have to put more away during that time. Enter yet again the side hustle. Because whatever industry we're in, most of the time, and in real estate, you can make whatever you want to make. You can choose how much to work and so forth. But there's also a limitation to all of us based on whatever line of work we're in and where we are geographically and everything else. It makes sense to have some secondary type of income for the household, whether it's two working spouses, whether it's a side hustle for one of both of you, and then putting that extra money away and living as if it didn't exist. So, in other words, live on your own salary, put your side hustle away like it doesn't exist. And what you'll find over time is that your salary will become less and less and less important because you'll be building your nest egg
Right.
in a really profound way. If you use a side hustle for vacations or for cars or for consumer stuff, that's fine. I mean, we all have to live and we all want to enjoy ourselves. But if you use it for wealth building, it will create an enormous nest egg for you. And that's just one way to do it. I mean, you're 10 years behind.
Right. So let's get into the weeds even more if we can. Let's just take my life, my situations, and um, just see what I can do better. Maybe some people can relate to me, versus
Okay.
playing with fictitious scenarios.
Sure.
Let's go for it. So, what questions do you have for me that I can answer to help paint this picture?
Well, I've got a ton. It depends how much you want to share with your
Let's
audience,
let's just do it.
but let's start with you and your wife is Karina.
Correct.
Okay, and the two of you, are you both working?
Yes.
Okay, and give me an idea of what your gross income is between the two of you.
Well,
Gross.
you want gross or net?
I only want gross. Let's start at the top.
Ah,
What you take home is important, but it's also something you can't fully control.
right. Gross is probably somewhere around 100,000.
Okay, and do you own a home?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have a mortgage on that home?
Yes.
All right. What is your mortgage payment?
Our mortgage payment, I should know this. Let's see. It's roughly $850.
Okay. Does that include your escrow, your taxes, and your
Yes.
insurance and so forth? Okay.
Mhm.
What other debt do you have other than the $900 that we're about to say
Right.
goodbye to?
So 900. I have slightly under 2,000, probably like 19 or 1,800 for a storm shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Zero credit card debt.
Good.
Zero car loans.
Good.
I have, let's see, 3,000 medical, and then my
Mm-hmm.
wife has about 1,500 medical, and I think that's it.
Okay. Well, that's good. You don't have a lot of debt, and relative to your income, you have very modest debt. How large is your mortgage?
Our mortgage is $850.
No, no, no. I mean the total
Oh,
amount
oh,
due. Like, what do you owe?
right now we probably around 111,000.
Okay. And is it financed in a fixed way or
Yes,
variable? Fixed 30,
fixed
30 years?
3.5, 30 year 3.5.
Beautiful. How long have you owned it?
Let's see, 16, and it's
Okay.
probably worth 170.
Great. So there's equity in it also.
Crap
The-
load of
the-
equity. I'm a real estate
But
agent, so I bought the equity into the
oh,
house.
there you go. Well, look, the good news is you bought at a great time where housing prices were reasonable. And of course, some of that depends on geography, but they were reasonable and money's cheap. I mean, 3.5% it is all the millennial generation knows, but the house I grew
Right,
up in was financed at almost 16%,
right.
which is nuts. Think about that. It's just crazy to think about. And
And
we,
houses
we
costed a lot less too.
well, as a percentage of income, I'm not sure that's true
Okay.
because the value of the house goes up, but so does your income. So, I came out of school and my first salary was 18 grand a year. Well, right now that would qualify you for every kind of public assistance there is. That's far less than minimum wage.
Right.
So everything is relative. The value of a dollar is funny that my grandparents paid for a house what we might pay for a car.
Yeah.
So you have to think about inflation. The numbers, when you think about what it's going to take for you to reach financial independence, the numbers are massive. Depending on what you want your lifestyle to be. Because what I would argue, and I tell people all the time, not to retire in the traditional sense, but to graduate to the next phase of life. Plan on being active and involved. Don't plan on being on fixed income and sitting around playing shuffleboard and watching Oprah. You'll lose your mind.
Right.
Okay. So, and there's only so much golf you can play, right? So, what I would say is, let's start with your saving. Do you and Karina, do you have retirement plans through an employer?
My wife does. I'm going to keep an undisclosed, I'm going to keep that part disclosed. It's healthy. Um,
Okay.
it's
But there
healthy.
is a plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
For her.
So
For
for
her.
her. Okay. So, are you considered self-employed as a real estate
Yes.
agent? Okay. So, are you aware that you could create your own retirement plan for just you?
Not really, no. I,
Okay.
I'm, I
So
did not know
what you
that.
can fund, do you file a Schedule C on your tax returns every year
I believe so. I just
for your
kind of,
for your for your business expenses that you
yeah,
that you put on your okay. You're eligible to fund most surely what's called a SEP IRA, SEP IRA. A SEP IRA is for self-employed persons. And a SEP IRA allows you to take up to 25 cents of every dollar you make, put it in a retirement plan tax deductibly.
hmm,
Huge. That's huge. And then if your wife, is it a 401k, a 403b? Is it what kind of
401k.
401k. Okay. Is there a match or a profit share or any kind of company
Correct.
contribution? Okay. So when you're first getting started, you have two competing priorities for young families. One is loans and making sure that they get paid, and yours are in pretty good shape. The other is making sure you take advantage of free money.
Hmm.
And free money doesn't happen very often, but one of
Right.
the pieces of free money is the employer match. So if the employer puts in 50 cents on the dollar up to your 6%, you're getting a 3% match on that. That is a 50% return instantly.
Right.
And it's not going to create a tax bill for you. So that's a win. The other thing you guys have to think about is should you or your wife be participating in Roth IRAs? Roth IRAs don't give you the tax deduction, but they grow indefinitely tax free, and withdrawals are tax free later. So, Evan, I ask you, are you going to be in a higher tax bracket in 35 years than you are today? It's hard to say, but I
Yeah,
think you are
probably.
for two
Um,
reasons. One, you're going to build some wealth because you have a six-figure income between the two of you, and even with a bunch of kids. You told me number three is on the way, so congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
And mouths to feed. The kids are very expensive, but you're in a position to start building wealth. You don't have a lot of debt. Your mortgage payment is incredibly modest relative to your income. There's things you can do. You're going to wind up, if you build wealth, you're going to wind up in a higher tax bracket in your 60s than you are now,
Mm.
all things being equal. And they're not equal because our government just passed a multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package and is on the verge of doing it again. And we have to pay for that.
Yeah.
And so if you think tax rates aren't going to go up at every conceivable level, I think you're deluding yourself. Income taxes are going to go up. The federal income tax could go up as soon as next year. Various states are in different shape and municipalities are in different shape. And you could see all kinds of new ways. The government likes to call it revenue.
Yeah.
Revenue, like they're creating something and they're creating revenue. It's not revenue, it's taxes. And when that occurs, it wouldn't shock me to see a lot of different tax rules change. Income tax rates, deductibility of various things, sales tax rates in various places, real estate tax rates in various places. It wouldn't shock me if the federal government decides to pay for a $6 trillion stimulus. It wouldn't shock me if there was a national sales tax.
Hmm.
All bets are off. There's not enough revenue. And when you take 30 million people and put them out of work all at once, there's less payroll tax. Some of those folks are going to miss mortgage payments or real estate taxes. They're certainly not consuming in the same way, so there's less sales tax. There's less velocity of money. There's less money in circulation doing things. Every time money moves, it's taxed somehow. So your tax bracket's going to be higher. So you and your wife both could fund Roth IRAs.
Let me ask you
Yeah,
this because
yeah.
I've toyed with the idea of a Roth IRA.
Mhm.
A few months ago, I I wanted an account to put money in to fund my retirement. And I finally just said, forget it. I don't care how much debt I have right now. I'm just going to open one. And I put $500 in it, and it's a mutual fund.
Mhm.
I think through like Fidelity or something like that.
Okay.
The reason why I decided to go mutual fund is because my goal is I want to put 20, 30, $40,000 in a fund. Hopefully it grows. And then when I come across a good opportunity in real estate, I want to take advantage of that because that's
Mhm.
something I know
Mhm.
very well. And I don't understand the stock market. I don't understand your industry that well.
Mhm.
So I know from a standpoint of wealth creation and growing financially, I know how to do that in real estate. I just don't have the resources yet. So I'm trusting an industry that I'm unfamiliar with to help put away and grow it until I can go into real estate for rental income.
If you're going to do that, you can't use your IRAs to do it. You
Yeah, no,
can't
you
do a
can't.
SEP IRA or a Roth IRA because you want to have access to the capital as a young man. So here's what I'll tell you about real estate, and it's your industry and you know it. Um, I think the rules of real estate are changing right now in a way that's going to be very impactful to people. So hear me out, and we can debate this. You can tell me where I'm mistaken because this is your industry, not mine. But two things, two basic groups of real estate. Forget personal residences. People are still going to own
Right.
homes, and they should, and that's great. Most of them should. Anyway. commercial real estate is one, which is about to get completely rocked. Commercial real estate, office space is going to get rocked in every major city in this country, and in plenty of outlying areas as well. And the reason for that is that companies have now figured out they don't need their employees to be in every day in order to be profitable and productive. So there will be more people telecommuting than ever before. And when that occurs, there'll be less need for office space. So if you own an office building, number one, you're going to have some tenants go out of business, which means you're going to have some vacancies. Number two, you're going to have some tenants who can't pay their rent. So that's going to create a different problem. You're also going to have tenants who require less space and are going to want to downsize. And fourthly, there's going to be fewer and fewer tenants available because there's not as much need for space. So the value of space, that means tenants are going to negotiate. Tenants are going to rule the roost for a while and be able to negotiate their rates, or they're going to go somewhere else. So landlords, I think, on commercial office space are about to get hurt. Another space is retail. If you own part of a strip center or strip mall and it's shopping, it better be groceries, because retail had already been going this way. I mean, e-commerce has taken over anyway, right? So at this point, I think something that might have taken 5 to 10 years is going to take 5 to 10 months, and we're going to see a lot of bankruptcies and a lot of real estate go vacant. Malls the malls were already in trouble, but now they're in worse trouble. So on the commercial side, I see that as an issue. I see some opportunities, though. I see opportunities on the industrial, the warehousing space, the distribution and fulfillment centers. If you own property that's low cost to maintain, like a parking lot, or that holds things that are delivered to consumers by e-commerce, the Amazon warehouses, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's also an opportunity in healthcare. Because I don't know about you, but telemedicine might work for some things, but I'm not doing a tele-root canal or a telecolonoscopy. So there's some stuff that I think we might still have to do in person, and healthcare, I think, is still going to be something people need to do physically. So now let's talk about residential, because I think that's probably more the line of thought that you were thinking.
Correct.
What I was suggesting, or what I've been suggesting to folks, is that you shouldn't dabble in residential real estate. Either decide you're going to be in the business and do it, or don't. And the reason that I say that is if you own one rental property, you are instantly under-diversified. And if that one rental property has a problem, an issue, a tenant that doesn't pay their rent, or a neighborhood that falls out of favor and you can't sell it, or you have a tenant damage the property, whatever happens, if it doesn't go well, if it doesn't go right, you instantly are under-diversified. You only have one property. If you have 10 rental properties, and I realize you have to have one before you can have 10, but if it's your goal to build a real estate empire for yourself and your family, then you have to consider what is the moment where you have enough diversification within your real estate portfolio to feel like you're safe from a really bad tenant or two. If you own 10 properties and 8 of the tenants are awesome and they're paying their rent on time and you can do escalations and all those things, that's super. And if 2 of them are problem children, for lack of a better term, you'll survive that. But if you only own one property and you have a tenant who loses a job or for whatever reason stops paying rent and you have to deal with evictions and other things, foreclosures, it is a disaster to you, because your mortgage payment doesn't stop just because the rent stopped coming in.
Right.
So I think it is real important, and I would say this as this is not personal advice per se, but it is, and that is, if you're going to do the real estate piece, do it as a business, not as a hobby.
Right.
I mean, you really have to decide this is something you want to do, and then do it and be the landlord. Because if you have lots of other expenses in there, and if you have property managers and all these other things, you're not going to be real profitable right away. And it may take you 20 years before you turn profit on some of those. There are other ways to diversify. And I would say real estate historically has been sort of a no-lose until the Great Recession. So right as you were finishing college, the Great Recession hits and real estate prices dropped, and people were baffled by this because entire generations had never seen that happen. So I think COVID's actually going to be bigger than the Great Recession on real estate. It won't be as short term, but it will be bigger. It'll be a wider trough. And that's because there are going to be so many people out of work who stop paying rent that there will be mortgages in arrears a lot of places. And it's a really slippery slope. And the government's talking about all kinds of measures to protect, but ultimately that just comes out of our tax pockets. So I really think I think residential real estate is a dangerous game right now. I think that now there are going to be buying opportunities if there are if rents are unpaid and mortgages stop being paid and there are short sales and foreclosures, there'll be opportunities, and you can profit from someone else's misfortune, which I know
Right.
is a horrible way to say it. It's capitalism
Yep.
101, I suppose.
No, it is. And the biggest thing when it comes to real estate is you make your money in the purchase more than any other place in real estate. And so with that in mind, every time I've bought a house, so for the house I have right now, where we could sell it $70,000 to $80,000, I bought it for 126 when it appraised in that condition at 145. Fix it up and it appraised higher. So there's that. I don't want to do flips consistently by any means, but this is my
Right.
personal residence. But no, I definitely see what you're saying. And I've given that a lot of thought. That's why I kind of like the idea of Section 8 housing, because the government is kind of flipping that bill. And that's a
Mhm.
little bit more of a steady. I mean, you're probably going to have to redo the house or the apartment almost after every tenant. But there's things
Pretty
that you can do
much.
to mitigate um, those things based off of flooring choices and stuff like that.
Sure.
So moving forward,
Yep.
so let's say we do that. I'm growing wealth, do an investment or two. What would be your advice to me right now to
Mhm.
financially free my family and to gain more wealth within the next, 1 year goal and then a 3 year goal? What can I do right now to change my trajectory?
A couple of things. I mean, ultimately, it's either going to be increasing your top line or decreasing your bottom line. So you increase income or you decrease expenses. So making more money, while it's not the solution to everything, would help.
Right.
In the absence of opportunity to do that, and lots of people don't have that opportunity, I would say the number one thing is going to be to continue to do debt reduction and get that out of the way. That will matter. The second thing will be to begin a program of investing that is automated, that doesn't require you to take action every month. It can be through a paycheck like a 401k, or it can be just a fund account that you add $100 to a month automatically from your checking account, whatever it is. There is an enormous amount of research to show that the psychological torture that people put themselves through as to whether it's a good time to invest or not a good time to invest is a wasted energy and a terrible drain, because it's always a good time to invest and it's never a good time to invest. Take your
Right.
pick. So automate it. Get yourselves in the habit. Get in the habit of living on 85% of your gross income. You make 100, put away 15.
So keep in mind when our gross is probably around 100, we
Mhm,
net
mhm.
75
Right. I know. Put away 15.
off
And if
of
you
the
put
75.
off of the 75, and you can do some of that pre-tax and some of it's a match. So for example, if you need to put away 15% and you put away 6 in a 401k and your employer matches 3, that's already 9%.
Right.
Doesn't have to be your money, just has to be someone's money.
Right.
And starting at 15%, being debt free, having an emergency fund, a wherewithal fund, so that you have savings to dip into if you need it, in case you need a washer and dryer all of a sudden. You don't have to go to MasterCard. You have a savings for that. So having the right habits, having
I'm
the right
laughing because I
emergency
need a
fund.
washer and dryer too.
Well, everybody needs a washer and dryer. You're not going to put them out on the clothesline. Maybe in the summer you
Uh,
can, but e- that's life. If it's
right.
not a washer and dryer, it's 4 tires,
Hmm.
brakes, or something. Life will always happen. The key is making sure that you're as bulletproof as you can be financially. And that means having an emergency fund. It means having the right risk management plan. It means having the right insurances. You got 3 little ones. There's things you can do immediately to make sure that they're better off if something happens to you. Some of that could be life insurance. Some of it could be disability insurance. Some of it could be your estate planning documents. Have the right documents set up, your wills and your powers of attorney and your healthcare directives. Some of it could be, again, the emergency fund. Having some money that's safe. It's FDIC insured. It's in a CD. It's in a savings account. It's someplace boring. It's not going to make you rich, but it might keep you from becoming poor.
Right.
And you can win by not losing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better. I use the iceberg example with the loan, but the fact of the matter is that if the Titanic had gotten there 20 minutes later by going slower rather than hitting the iceberg at full speed, they'd have been better off. Sometimes it's better to just miss the big mistake. It means being protected in the event you're sued because of a fender bender and somebody suddenly can't move their neck properly.
Right.
All the nonsense. It means having the right insurance coverages, the right employee benefits, the right tax picture. There may be things you're not even looking at from a tax perspective. Do you use a CPA or TurboTax or H&R Block, or what's that look like?
I use a CPA.
Okay. Your CPA should be finding you opportunities, and one of them is your retirement savings.
Okay.
If you can put away 15% in, and I would still say Roth IRAs to me will be more valuable even than real estate. And for a couple of reasons, but one of which is it'll grow tax-free forever. Real estate will cost you taxes every year. And ultimately, and I know there are ways to exchange it, but at some point the piper gets paid and there's taxation. And right now, capital gains rates are at modern day lows. But we have an election in 6 months that could dramatically change that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen, but the country's broke. The country's worse than broke. We're $20+ trillion in the hole. Trillion. That we can't even fathom that. Tax rates are going to go up, and there are going to be issues around that. And when that occurs, you can expect that the low-hanging fruit that Congress can go after are people with investable assets, whether it's real estate or stocks and bonds, or if you have investments, you have money. And for them to take capital gains rates back up to make them the same as ordinary rates would only impact a small percentage of the population. And they're the easiest to go after. Politically, it's simple. And so same thing with estate taxes, inheritance taxes. Having money get taxed when you die, which is the most obscene and absurd thing I can think of.
Right.
But it happens, and every state is different. And if you die in New Jersey, it's going to cost you a heck of a lot more than if you're in Florida, where it's going to cost you nothing. Yeah, based on your residency, not actually physically where you are when you're windsurfing. But in terms of that, I would tell you any place you can put money where it will never be taxed again is the single best way to protect and preserve your wealth. There are 4 that I can think of.
What are they?
Well, you tell me.
Well, I mean,
let's have a little fun. The Roth IRA is one. I gave you one.
I was just going to say, I know Roth IRA.
Correct. And the same thing with Roth 401k. That's all. Okay. So let's think about this. There are 4 vehicles that almost any American taxpayer can use. 4 places where you can put money where it's never taxed again. One is the Roth IRA. One is 529 college savings plans. If you're going to help your kids with education or your grandkids, if you have parents who were so happy to help you with college that they can't wait to help their fabulous grandchildren with college, money can be put into those plans. It's never taxed again, so long as it's used for education. Some states offer tax deductions at the state level for contributions. So you might be able to save money that way. It then grows with no 1099s. And when you make a withdrawal, if it goes right to school, you pay no taxes on the gains. And oh, by the way, it's not a gift. If you put money into your what's your oldest son's name?
Kaysen.
Kaysen. You put money into Kaysen's account. And Kaysen grows up, and Kaysen's a good egg. Kaysen wants to go to whatever college and so forth, and you're going to use the money for Kaysen. What's Kaysen's little brother's name?
Levi.
Levi's not a good egg. Levi's a troublemaker. Levi is to heck with you, Dad, and so forth and so on. Of course, that's not they're perfect kids in every way, so it couldn't be. But if something like that happens, the money doesn't belong to them. It's always yours. You still own it, or your parents do. And so they're nothing but beneficiaries on the accounts. You have not given this to them to do whatever they want with, to say, to heck with college, I'd rather pay some taxes and get a Porsche. That's not an option for them. So there's that. So 529s are a great place to save money. It can be over generations, and it's never taxed. Another is the HSA. The health savings account is one of the great, maybe the greatest piece of tax legislation ever. If you're in a high deductible health plan, do you have health insurance through your wife's employer?
Yes.
Is it a high deductible plan?
$3,000 deductible.
There you go. So are you putting money in the HSA?
About $150 each month.
Does her employer put any in the HSA?
Probably, I'm not sure.
Okay. You guys can put up to $6,100 in there every year. It's all tax deductible. And you don't have to use it this year. People think if you put it in, you have to use it. That's a flexible spending account. A flexible spending account is where you wind up with money you thought you were going to need, and it's December and you have to use it so you get 7 pair of glasses. That's a terrible plan. But the HSA is amazing. It can roll indefinitely. So you can take a tax deduction for your contribution. You can grow the money indefinitely. You can invest the money. It doesn't have to sit in cash. It can be in mutual funds. And you can grow it forever. And when you are over retirement age, number one, we're all going to have health expenses later in life.
Right.
So you can use it for that. Number two, if you don't use it for that, if you're one of those fortunate people who never get sick a day in your life and you turn 90 and you've never had, medical expenses and you've been saving this money all this time, you can still take withdrawals from it and it's treated just like another IRA.
Interesting.
There's no penalty. You'll pay taxes on it if you do it that way, but there's no penalty. Here's the other thing. You said you had some medical expenses.
Right.
And if you have debt, you ought to get rid of that first. But if you're funding the HSA, let's say you're funding the HSA for the next 10 years. For that entire 10-year period, you're growing the money. You're growing, it's invested, it's growing by whatever percentage, the account's getting bigger. You can then file a claim 10 years from now for all 10 years of expenses for the receipts that you have. You can take all the money out 10 years from now, reimburse yourself for all the medical expenses you've paid, and not pay any tax. So what I would say is if you have the wherewithal to do it, the HSA should be part of a long-term savings plan and retirement plan. It should not be part of a way to pay for deductibles or copays.
So let's say on the amount of medical debt that I owe, on my next paycheck, let's say I could just pay it off in real estate, all the medical debt. Would you say put that in the HSA and then use the HSA to pay medical debt? Okay.
Absolutely. Because you're going to get a tax deduction for it. If you just pay your bill, you don't get a tax deduction.
Okay.
And talk to your CPA. Your CPA should have you maxing the HSA and in a perfect world, not using it. Although while there's debt, I would say if you can put it into the HSA and then take it out, not pay taxes on it and get the tax deduction and then still put away what you need to be putting away and get yourself debt free, that creates cash flow that you can then save and save even more.
That's awesome.
That's good stuff. That's free money and legal. And the fourth one is whole life insurance. Whole life insurance is a place where you can put money that will become collateral for you. It'll be property for you. It's something you can use during your lifetime. And it's never taxed again if you do it right. It'll have a death benefit to protect your wife and kids. But it's also going to be a source of retirement income to you if you live long enough and you decide you want to do it that way, just like a Roth IRA with a death benefit. It's an amazing vehicle. I used mine to buy my first home.
That's actually what my parents used on my dad to pay for my college.
Okay, so you already know how this works. My parents bought whole life insurance on me when I was 14 years old. When I was 25, the policy had been assigned to me, which it was their option, by the way. It was their money, so they didn't have to, but they decided to do that, and I appreciate that. I used that to create the down payment for my first home. So my life insurance that was bought for me for very little money when I was 14 years old became the down payment for my first home. I paid $91,500 for my first home. I sold it for $225,000. Then I used my life insurance again to start a company because I had paid it back. So I used it again to start Brotman Financial Group in 2003. And it has made, it's made 20 years worth of progress. We now have 21 employees and significant revenues and profitability and all of that. And it's all because of a life insurance policy. And I'm not dead. Despite rumors to the contrary, I'm still very much alive right here. So that means that's why they don't call it death insurance. I didn't have to die for somebody to feel like they won.
Right. So for my family, get out of debt.
Yes.
put more money in savings.
Yes.
How much money do you think realistically we should have in savings? A
Do you and
family?
your wife make comparable money? Are your incomes roughly similar?
No.
Okay. Then in a situation where the two of you were both making similar money,
Hmm.
I would tell you to try and have 3 months of your net spendable money in savings. If one of you makes dramatically more than the other, you probably want that closer to 6 months.
Okay.
So you told me you net $75,000
Correct.
in a year. That means that you are netting $6,250 a month. That
Yeah.
means your savings cushion should be at least 18 grand and probably closer to 35 before you start doing any meaningful investing. Other than the 401k where you get a match and the HSA where you get a tax break, a big
Mm.
tax break.
Okay. So, all right, I'm wrapping my head around all this. Um, so right now, the way it works too is because with my industry, it's really weird because, I haven't made anything for 2 or 3 months. And then
Hmm.
I'm speaking hypothetically here, I could make $20,000 next month.
Hmm.
And, so what we've done is we've based our entire lifestyle off of what my wife brings in because hers is steady.
Perfect.
And then whatever I bring in goes towards savings, debt reduction, and anything around the house that we want.
Perfect.
Um, and so that's how we're managing that. And so just so I'm hearing you clearly, get out of debt, get more in savings, and then start focusing more on savings. Is that correct? Or would you
On
say
investing.
on
That's when
investing?
you would start investing.
On
The
investing.
only thing I would do prior to being debt free, and I don't mean the mortgage isn't debt, it's
Yeah.
leverage. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the consumer stuff, the medical stuff, the student stuff.
Mhm.
Um, the only thing I would do prior to that is a spot where you're going to get an employer match. And I would tell you, because you don't need the tax break now, despite what you're feeling, you're in a tax bracket that in modern history has not been better and won't get any better.
Right.
I would say Karina should probably do the Roth 401k because you don't need the tax break. She'll still get the match from her employer and it will go into the traditional 401k. So you'll have
So,
both.
okay, hold on. Say that again.
If she puts, and I don't know what the match is, let's say they match up to 3% if you do 6%.
Yep.
Okay. And let's say for round numbers, her income's $50,000 a year. I'm making this up. 6% of $50,000 is $3,000. If she puts $3,000 into her Roth 401k by payroll deduction gradually over the course of the year, the employer match will be 3% of that, which is $1,500. And the $1,500 will go into her traditional 401k. So she'll have both. They'll
Okay.
both grow. And you fast forward a few decades and she'll have the benefit of what's called tax diversification, where she can decide how much of her income she's going to take that's taxable and how much she's going to take that's non-taxable. And you can play games based on what the tax rates are in your state, in your municipality, in the federal government. You can game it and determine how to do that if you have tax diversification. You want some of your assets to get capital gains treatment,
Mm-hmm.
real estate, mutual funds, whatever. You want some of it to get ordinary income tax treatment, and you want some of it to be tax-free.
Hmm.
And so if she funds the Roth at 6% and gets a match that's another 3 into the traditional, that's 9%. You only have to do another 6% to hit that 15% bogey, which is not gospel. Some people need more than that, some need
Right.
less.
So, just so I'm understanding, would her if she started another investment account, her company would also match
No,
that,
they're
or
only the 401k. So that the
Okay.
Roth 401k is through her employer.
Okay. So currently she just has a 401k. Can she make it a Roth 401k?
Probably. You have to read what's called the summary plan description or the SPD for her plan.
Okay.
Most plans today offer the ability to choose traditional or Roth when you make your deposits. And the only difference is whether you're doing pre-tax dollars or post-tax dollars. I would tell you, you can have your cake and eat it too. Use post-tax dollars to fund her Roth 401k and use pre-tax dollars to fund her HSA.
Okay.
Your tax bill will be better than it had been. You'll have more money being put away, and both the Roth 401k and the HSA used properly will never be taxed again. So if she's saving 15% of her income, 12 from her and 3 from her employer, the only piece she'll pay taxes on later is the 3 from her employer. That means 80% of what you're putting away will be tax-free forever.
That's awesome.
That's a big deal. You know, if you wind up with a $1 million account and it's $1 million in an IRA or traditional account, when you take that $1 million out, you have to pay ordinary income tax on it. Well, income tax rates could be 40%. So you don't have $1 million, you have 600 grand. It's like having $1 million account with a $400,000 mortgage on it.
Yeah.
If you sell it, you're only getting the 600. But if it's a Roth and it's worth $1 million, it's $1 million.
Okay.
And that's why I think that is for the two of you at the moment. That's the way I'd approach that.
So we get out of debt, build up our savings to say 35,000.
Mhm.
Use the tax diversification, what you're talking about. And what do you think about the idea of paying off a mortgage sooner? Like,
I think it depends on individual circumstances. It depends on the cost of money, and it depends on the opportunity cost.
okay.
So right now, your cost of money is very cheap. It's 3.5%, and it's deductible. The interest is if you're itemizing. By the way, most people don't itemize anymore. So lots of Americans don't get deductions on their mortgage interest anymore.
Yeah, ours isn't itemized. Our tax accountant said that, and I don't know the correct terminology, but if we itemize it, it would have been less than the general deduction.
Right. So you took the standard deduction.
Yeah, we took the
If you take the standard deduction, your mortgage is not deductible.
Okay.
The HSA is. The 401k is. But your mortgage interest is not. So that's something to think about. I think right now money is so cheap that there are reasons to look at shorter term mortgages, for example, but only if you're already hitting your financial independence savings target.
Right, which we weren't.
And you're not. And you know, your target might not be 15%. It could be 12. It could also be 32. Like, you know, that would take an analysis to figure out just how far behind you are from the student loan or just what your target's going to look like. But if you're hitting that, if you have your risk management plan, your emergency fund, and all those things built, and you're hitting your target for your financial independence target for saving, every additional dollar can either be used for fun or for earlier debt reduction or whatever makes you happy. But I think you have to do those things first. That's like, it's like the airplane safety lecture when the mask falls and you have to put your own on before you help your own kids, which I can't imagine having to do, quite frankly. But to me, it is making sure that you're going to be financially independent and stable for the rest of your life, and then worrying about other options and other things.
So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Christianity, where are you on that? Because my next question may or may not based off of your personal belief.
I'm not an atheist, but I'm not denominational.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept of tithing?
Absolutely. That's the 10% of gross.
Right. Towards God and the church. That's one of the things I do believe in.
Okay.
I personally, in September of 2019, I felt God tell me to pause from that, which is, you know, I didn't understand. I talked to my pastor. He's like, yeah, I think God is telling you this. We worked it out and currently pausing that so that we can get my family in a better financial situation. Because last year we went through 7 major financial crises.
Wow. Okay.
6 of them happened 1 month after another.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty devastating. But we came out swinging after that and rebuilding fairly quick. Well, let me phrase this. I don't want to say rebuilding like, oh, hey, look what we have. You know, we're on the top of the world, because we're not. We just got to the place like, okay, this is probably the best. Like, we're probably better than we've ever been in our life, but it's completely volatile right now, if that makes sense. And
it makes sense.
At what point would you say, if we wanted to start giving again, would be a good, not just safe spot for me And because there's this idea of listening to God and being obedient, but also like, all right, no, you need to take care of your house before you try to take care of someone else's, because I have a responsibility to my family.
You do. Tithing is something that is intensely personal. And lots of different religions and cultures have something similar. And I think to stay true to your heart and true to your faith is real important. And so I would not tell you otherwise. That said, um, there are ways to handle charitable giving today that are more beneficial than others. And I tend to look at it from a financial and tax perspective because that's just, I'm trained to do that, right?
Right.
Um, so in some ways, there's something called pooling of gifts or bundling of gifts, which means that it is better for you as a donor to a charity, any
Mm-hmm.
charity, to lump all the gifts together in one tax year so that you get the most bang for your buck from a tax deduction standpoint.
So instead of giving, let's say, a couple $100 a month, save that and then make one big
gift. Now,
hmm,
in a perfect world, you'd be coming from a position of assets where you could make the gift in advance because that's, of course, what the charity would want. But at the
right.
end of the day, you're not itemizing. You're not taking a charitable deduction. So, there are ways for wealthy people to make big donations, and that happens a lot. So, for example, if you have listeners who are in that situation, they want to make 5-figure gifts, for example, or 6-figure gifts, or create big gifts. Um, Typically, the way to do that is to create funds for yourself where you can make the gift in one year and then distribute it to charity over time. And
Hmm,
there's some really creative, fascinating ways to do that. Donor advised funds are one. Just pooled income funds. There's ways to do it. So wealthy people have figured out the way to get the most bang for their buck from a tax perspective. Um, I think what you're talking about here is not so much tax driven; it's heart driven, it's faith driven,
right.
it's very different. And so, what I would say is, if it makes you uncomfortable to stay on pause for any length of time, or if you feel like that's untrue to your own faith or your own beliefs, then you should go back to that as soon as you feel comfortable and confident to do it. And I don't I don't want to see that circumvent your ability to save and take care of your family.
Right.
Um, so you mentioned that your whole person podcast is about lots of F's. There's 6 of them.
Yep. Faith,
Finance is
family, and
only one.
finances.
Finance is one. Faith is one, and family is one. This encompasses all three.
Right.
And so you have to balance that. You have to balance what are the needs of your family, what are the best moves to make financially, and what do you have to do to honor your faith. And
Hmm.
I think if you can harmonize that, and everyone will come up with a different balance, and that's okay. And if you and Karina agree on what that's going to be, all the better. It's better if
Right.
you guys are on the same page for that.
Before we say we end this, do you have any
Yeah.
other questions for me or advice that you can think of?
I don't. I would say if you want, when we go into the close of the show, and I know you're going to edit this out, when we go into the close of the show, I'm going to give some resources that are available that are free that your listeners can check out.
Okay.
So if they want to learn more about these strategies, there's ways to get them.
Perfect. Well, for starters, before we end the show, I like to do it almost the same way every single time. And by asking the same 3 questions to every guest. So my first question to you is, in the terms of self-talk, what is the biggest lie that you have told yourself in your internal monologue that you currently struggle with?
Um, I think there's a tendency for me to think that anything I do isn't good enough.
Mm.
Um, and it's not about keeping score. It's not that I don't feel like I'm making enough money or having enough success. It's that I feel like I can always do more to help folks, the more to help clients, more to help employees, more to. I just always feel like I'm never at 100%,
Right.
and that's really not true. I mean, I'm doing the best I can. I think we all are, but I'm definitely doing the best I can. And so the self talk would be that I could do more. I'm not
Okay.
sure I could.
What brings you peace?
Well, several things. One is meditation. When I take time to meditate and breathe, that is extremely helpful to me. And the other is when my toes are in sand. If I'm at the beach, I'm a happy human. That is my place. And COVID has put a dent in my beach plans. But as soon as I can get back to where I hear the ocean, I'm going to be a happy, happy human, peaceful.
Good. Last question. What's the best decision you've ever made?
The best decision I ever made was to go into the industry that I'm in professionally, because I love it. I work so much and I work so hard, but I love it, and it feels like a calling. And I can't imagine what it would be like to punch a clock every day or go to a job you hate. Life's too short. So finding something that I love to do, where I can help other people and where I can make an honest living, that was the best decision I made, was professionally.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today on the Whole Person Podcast. Go ahead and share your resources, your tools, how people can follow you or connect with you if they have any questions past this podcast.
Sure. Happy to, Evan. First, we talked about the 4 strategies where you can put money and never pay taxes again. There's an ebook available for free download at lowtaxbook.com. And if you go to that site, you can download the white paper. It's about a 20-page read. It's not overwhelming, but it'll teach you how to use those 4 strategies to reduce your tax bill indefinitely. And so I'm happy to share that with everyone. I also host a podcast called Don't Retire, Graduate. And it's an attempt to reframe what retirement is, from a retreat to an advancement. And so that's at don'tretiregraduate.com. And always happy to have listeners for the show and so forth. And lastly, our company website is bfgfa.com. And there's plenty of resources there and information and ways to schedule a call or a consultation anytime.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too, Evan. It's been fun.
Bye. When I started this podcast, it was important for me to lead by example, that I wouldn't hide behind a fake mask, acting like I've arrived and speaking from the mountaintop. My whole purpose was to be vulnerable about where I was, my failures, my struggles, and my successes, so that I could be a bridge, that I could be a gap in this process of showing people how to change in the areas of faith, family, finances, friendship, fitness, and fun, because that's exactly where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I had a coach years ago, and he was the first coach I've ever had. And he did it for a very affordable rate because I couldn't afford anything more than what he offered me. But he told me this: Evan, someday you're going to get in a spot where you're going to be able to give back to others. And I want you to remember what I'm doing for you here and now. That it's made affordable so that you can actually go through it. He goes, I believe in you, and I trust that you'll do this. And so because of that, it resonated within me that at a certain point, when I felt I've had enough hard knocks that I had something to offer other people, I would start a coaching program. And this is that. I am now starting a coaching program, and I'm going to make it affordable because by the graces of someone else that helped me out when I was first starting my journey, I wanted to do the same for other people. So I'm going to offer a free 15-minute coaching phone call to anyone that wants it. You can go to the website, thewholepersonpodcast.com, and sign up for that free coaching phone call. And if you're looking to have a longer, extended coaching relationship outside of that first 15-minute phone call, I have the prices right up front. I'm open about it, and I'd be more than happy to see if we'd work well with one another and can help you reach and achieve the goals that you have in life. Guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the show.